Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project live show. I'm your host, D. Doss. I'm glad everyone could join us tonight. We are going to talk about a few things, most of which is how some of these missing 411 cases, and I'm guilty of this myself, uh, not really taking care in what I say and how I say it as far as these cases go, and trying to blame them or not blame, but speculating on how they could be these anomalous cryptids and these unscientifically verified creatures, which usually there's no proof of that. Uh, we have a personal responsibility. I mean, I have a personal responsibility to look at this stuff and try to decipher what I believe the truth is before I open my mouth and regurgitate it to someone. And I promise I'll have more due diligence in this because it seems to be a trend that's happening that's not a good one.
Yeah,
And also, I'm joined by voice actor and narrator extraordinaire, Mr. Swamp Dweller.
brother, I don't know what this voice acting heebie-jeebies is, but thank you very much, brother. I'm just a good old boy out here trying to sell some shine, you feel?
No, I don't feel. That's a terrible Southern accent, too, by the way.
Thank you, brother. I'll tell you what.
Oh,
Man.
mercy. Not a compliment.
I came in here. I came in I came in here. I came in here to ruin this perfectly serious and important topic to talk about the dangers of letting your children
Yeah, that's where I'm
watch.
gonna stop you. You're thinking too hard on that one. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure it was gonna be something terrible if you had to think that hard.
I don't know, man.
We came to warn
I'm
you
just
about the dangers of gingivitis.
there we go. It's better than what I was gonna say.
Probably
Do you
so.
have?
I think I pulled you out of that one in
I
the
don't know
nick
what
of
you're talking about, D. I'm over here just talking about good old American football, and you're over here. I don't know,
American
man.
football, huh?
Insinuating. You're insinuating some bad stuff, brother.
I'm not
But
insinuating
anyways,
anything. I'm trying to
you
talk to
should.
these people about the responsible. What was I talking about again? Being responsible and talking about these real cases where people go missing or are found dead and trying to immediately blame them on some sort of cryptid, dogman, Bigfoot, gnomes, whatever the case may be, instead of actually looking at the facts,
Yeah,
reading
yeah.
public police reports and trying to, I mean, because I think a lot of stuff slides under the radar and kind of gets chunked to the side, um, where
Well, I think
there's
it
real
really
killers and stuff,
distracts.
you know?
It honestly really just I feel like it really does distract the attention from where it needs to be. Like if you're out there chasing shadows when there could just be a more cut and dry answer for something, I feel like that's just hurting, the case, the family, and everybody in the long term of things when you're not looking. It's like I covered a case for like a hiker went missing and their last cell phone ping was from the southeast, but for some reason officials check why would you focus on something that you can't prove, or maybe one person says, oh, I saw him in the northeast, but the evidence is going towards the southeast. Why wouldn't you follow where the evidence is going instead of speculation?
Because there was a dogman sighting in the Northeast.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it,
I think it just it's very unfortunate. Like I said, I don't want to like I'm not the guys like the Debbie Downer. It's just like, oh yeah, cryptids, blah blah blah. Nothing against cryptozoology in a whole. It's just I feel like it really muddies up a lot of things a lot, especially when it comes to like a lot of actual, you know, disappearances, whether it's the missing 411 stuff, especially the missing 411 stuff. Like I do videos on that all the time, and it's always just comments that Bigfoot took this person, Bigfoot took that person, and there's like nothing insinuating that at all.
my whole thing is this: say I'm some nefarious, rich Satanist who's doing all these crazy rituals out in the woods, and the most anybody ever says about it is that there is some unscientifically verified, uncaptured, undocumented creature that's doing it all. Would that prompt me to stop or continue? Or not, you don't even have to say even Satanist or anything. A murderer, Jack the Ripper. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's really going to propel me to continue my nefarious deeds. Because if they're looking for the
Yeah,
boogeyman, you know what I mean? Like they're not looking for a flesh and blood human being with motives and
they're chasing monsters. You're not
yeah, chasing
chasing
monsters.
actual facts.
Which that neither one of us are saying that these creatures don't exist. But
Oh no, I mean, I feel like, as I've always said, if any of these crazy fantastic beasts exist, I feel like Bigfoot's the most likely.
yeah, and Bigfoot does exist. Dogman does exist. With that being said, if this creature has gone on since time on millennium, being discreet and relatively unseen, even in the days in which it was written about, I doubt that they're going around just murdering people left and right.
It just seems really careless and reckless for their kind of cause, right? Like if they just go out and kill people, wouldn't that like because like if there's
Yes,
say eight well,
absolutely.
almost there's 7 billion people on the planet, I'm sure there's not 7 billion or even near that many Bigfoot. If they're going out and attacking, messing with the bee's nest, I think they're a little smarter than that, right?
Absolutely. Like Brian K. Ritchie just said, in my experience, most monsters look like the rest of us. And I mean, that's
That's very wise words.
yeah, very wise words. I mean, uh, you can name a whole Harlem Globetrotters list of killers that operated out of rural areas. Ed Gein pops to mind. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I don't think it was Bigfoot in some old house in what was it, Illinois, sewing suits out of people's flesh that he dug up.
Yeah. I mean, that's then
Or
to,
like
to make
H.H.
another
Holmes building that hotel, with the
yeah,
trap
yeah.
doors and the furnaces and stuff. I don't think Dogman has the wherewithal to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Not to say that they're not intelligent beings, but I don't think they're, building architecture, you know, intelligent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah,
Hannibal
sure. I don't
Lecter.
know. Yeah, there you go. They're not freaking Buffalo Bill, even though Buffalo Bill just kind of had a hole in his basement. But
It's
Dogman doesn't
possible
have a basement
that we know of. I think
that
Dogman
we
lives.
know of.
I think Dogman lives in the basement of the woods,
But
honestly, but that's a
we're
different
assuming
conversation.
it's like be
No,
funny. It's like
man.
Dogman's in his basement. You assuming I don't have a basement now, brother?
Yeah. Assumptions, you know what they say about those.
Yeah, I get you
But
good.
I'm telling you, Dogman and Bigfoot, they live in the basement of the woods in these caves and underwater coves and whatnot. That doesn't make them nefarious by any means. Kind of scary that they could just pop up out of nowhere. If anybody wants to know, in my opinion, how Bigfoot and Dogman travel around and do the things they do, watch the remake of Friday the 13th that came out in the mid 2000s.
They
They
going
have like
underground.
openings everywhere. Yeah, I mean openings, under deadfall and stuff like that. And there's a lot of Native American tribes who say so
I mean, it makes sense, 100%.
because they're
Like,
huge. Where are they going? How are they just appearing and disappearing? Aside
well, yeah,
from
if
hitting
they're
a
flesh
tree.
and blood creatures, they're obviously not teleporting, right? So, it does make sense, all these people talk about what do they call like the Darrow or whatever, the underground people and all that. I what if it's I don't really know, if there's elephant looking people underground, but like things like that, there could very well be, tunnel systems underground where these things are going. How extensive they are, I don't know, but it does sound like it does sound like it makes sense. But at the same time, like if Bigfoot's that big, like don't you think they would maybe evolve to be smaller to fit these areas more? Or do you think like there's just like full on cave systems and shit under there?
Well, I mean, I think there's full-on cave systems. The De Beers Diamond Company in Southern Africa, when they first started digging in the late 1800s, found a massive cave system that was at the time deeper than any person had dug. So, yeah, I do believe that
Wow.
there are massive cave systems. I'm not saying that. Well, I can say that in L.A. under the Los Angeles Library or something. Did you hear about that? They found some city with like libraries and stuff. It was the size of a skyscraper going down and there were different
Yeah, I heard
levels.
that.
And I mean, there's evidence towards that point. So,
What's
it's
crazy is
it's
like
not unheard of. It's tangible facts. It's not speculative opinions. Now, you know what I'm
it, it
saying?
it kind of gives me anxiety because it makes me think of those it makes me think of those, like those movies where like the things come from underground and there's like people like what's that movie, like is it called The Descent, where like
Yeah, The
the cave,
Descent, the most
and
terrifying movie of all time.
it just makes me think of that, like these Bigfoot creatures we saw so creepy looking underground, like let's say you're going to a cave and all of a sudden like these eyes just open up right in front of you. I don't know, that shit's so much more scarier than Bigfoot being in the woods. I would much rather Bigfoot be in the woods than be some underground dwelling creepy ass thing popping out of nowhere. I don't know.
Well, I mean, because that's tangible though. Like you can quantify that and deduce that they're in these underground cave systems. You know what I mean? Like where it gets into Star Trek science fiction, that they're jumping in and out of the quantum realm, and with Ziggy and Professor Beckett and all that kind of stuff. That's where it's hard for me to wrap my mind around, because I don't have that much of an imagination. You know what I mean? Like I personally, I've
I
never
want to
seen.
know what they're smoking, and I want some of it.
I've, after having multiple occurrences and sightings, I've never seen any of these things do anything outside of the laws of nature. At the time, I may have thought that they were. Aside from that Lost Tom incident, which I have my own theories about that. I don't really talk about it, but UFOs, we can get in that. Like the UFO sightings, a lot of people say that the missing 411, going back to that, could be UFOs going in the woods and taking people, doing Lord knows what to them, and then taking them back for some reason. I find problems with that just because these supposed kidnappings, which they're kidnappings, they're not abductions. These kidnappings of people have been going on since the 30s or 40s in modern times. There's evidence to prove that it's been going on a whole lot longer than that. But I think that there's a human hand involved in that as well. There have been people that said they've woken up from their stupor and it felt like it was a drug-induced stupor, and they saw human beings, some in military uniforms. So I really think there's a big deception, even with the Bigfoot and Dogman thing going on. Like I think there's a huge deception taking place in a lot of these cases. And that's
Very
my
well
2
could
cents.
be. I don't know, man. Like, I think it makes as much sense as anything else,
Well, say that you had a working knowledge of psychotropic hallucinogens in plant life, and say you use that to your advantage, coupled with technology, say sound-induced technology, like how those, what do you call it? Sound pointed. It's the same thing people say Bigfoot do. What's the word for it? You know what I'm talking about, Swampy. Where they use sound to kind of hypnotize people.
God damn it.
Yeah, how can I not know this? And
I literally just had it in my brain.
Partly because I don't believe they do it.
Infrasound.
Infrasound. There we go. Infrasound. Infrasound's a technology that people use. So who's to say that there's not some? Let's blame this, hidden hand or the Illuminati, whatever anybody wants to call it, some nefarious government group using all this technology coupled with some sort of a psychotropic drug or hallucinogen that's found in the area, all for this elaborate type of thing. Maybe it's some experiment they're doing, just like I do believe that's taking place at Skinwalker Ranch to a certain extent. People hearing what sounds like metal on metal and machines and underground railways on the property. I think that it may be one of those deep underground military bases.
See, that's making increasingly more sense to me, because the more I think about it, the more I really start to realize how many underground dwellings there actually have been around where I live.
You've been in one.
Like underground, and you can actually go underground and visit it still. I mean, it's not legal, but allegedly. But anyway, it's things like that. There, maybe broke a manhole or two in my time, but when there's like plenty of places like that, not allegedly, and then with New York City, their sewer systems are basically tunnel systems, right? I'm sure they turn into tunnel systems somewhere. And there's this, I'm sure most main big ass cities have things of that sort. So would an underground base really be that much out of, reach?
No. I
I'm
don't
pretty sure
believe
we
so
have
whatsoever.
there's documented government bases that are underground, right? Because I know we know there's several bunkers and stuff from like the Cold War and all that. But
Sure.
like,
But yeah, there are documented they call them DUMBs, deep underground military bases. And it's not unheard of whatsoever. So when you get these black budgets where, say, the Pentagon's wanting $3 billion for stationery and ink pens, you can kind of transfer those funds into building this kind of stuff. So when I watched The Hunt for the Skinwalker, Timothy Beloved and I were kind of talking about it. Every occupant of that property talks about hearing metal on top of metal. There's big chunks of ground missing and earth missing from the pastures. The ritualistic style and how these livestock are killed. I really think there's a human hand in a lot of this stuff. And going back to what you were saying, what we were saying off air, man, like,
a lot of cases.
yeah, a ton of cases like that, but it's always immediately blamed for entertainment purposes on skinwalkers or dogman or Bigfoot, or the list goes on. And nobody actually does any kind of due diligence to look at the evidence that's there.
I've been thinking about that a lot recently because I've been slowly covering more and more like unsolved cases and things that just have really weird details about them, and I've just noticed that more and more how quickly people point the finger at like a supernatural or monster cause instead of like actually going a little bit deeper to see what's there. Like I feel like so often like they're like, oh well, there was a monster in the cave, but we didn't actually go see what was in the cave type thing.
Right. Yeah, we're going to make a broad assumption. Case in point, somebody said something in the chat about LA newspapers in the 1930s. The Black Dahlia murder. They were calling that murderer the werewolf. You know what I mean? So what's that going to put in people's minds? When lo and behold, I believe it's still unsolved, but it was definitely a man that did it. So I think that a lot of that's still going on. I'm sorry?
Somebody else coming here? Oh, maybe it was just us. Never mind. I don't
know. No, I think it's just us. What were you saying again? I'll cut you off.
Oh, I was just saying, the guy's name escapes me right now, but they did like this whole documentary with like the son of the guy who killed or allegedly was the Black Dahlia murder.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's a very interesting one.
It's very interesting. The whole Black Dahlia case is super interesting.
I think part of one of the first American Horror Story series did like a whole episode or two about it, based on it too. It's very interesting.
It's supposedly the stepfather, right, who was a plastic surgeon.
Yeah, and apparently
some sort of a Satanist or some sort of occultist. Which a lot of that was going on. A lot of people don't know. A lot of that was going on in the early 1900s, in the ritualistic way that she was murdered and spread out. And what do you call it? The small, like the Joker.
Oh yeah.
There's a special name that they have for it. Anyways,
I think it's called a Chelsea grin, right?
Yeah, something like that. But this son put forth a pretty good case using evidence that was in public records that it was his stepfather that actually did this killing, and that there were very well-known actors and actresses involved to a certain degree.
Yeah. It's crazy to think because like the 1900s was a time of revitalized spirituality. So like being like all these, mediums and all these crazy things, it was like all the rage at this time. So it's so weird how like all these crimes kind of have like all these increasingly more spiritual cults, ritualistic, things about them that have almost come like they're still around in cases today, but it's almost become a norm now. Instead of being like, wow, this is a weird and macabre story. Now it's kind of just like, yeah, another guy got freaking sacrificed to Satan. Sucks.
Unfortunately.
Shit.
But excuse me, sorry. Frog in my throat. But there is a clear and decisive link between all these things, if not most of them, especially in the 1960s, like the Son of Sam, Berkowitz. There's a lot of interviews that you can watch on YouTube right now where he admits that he was using very, very heavy drugs and hallucinogens and that he was actively a part of some Luciferian cult. The same Luciferian cult that Charles Manson was involved with, and that supposedly was in Canada and paid him to do the murders, or to at least set up the murders of Sharon Tate, which, according to these same documentaries and sources, her husband, who directed Rosemary's Baby, was a part of this cult as well and kind of helped set it up. That's why he just was conveniently gone. There was also the ketchup heiress. I forget her name. The Heinz heiress, the woman who got that empire. She was also murdered in that. It's a sad deal, man. But if you watch Berkowitz and Manson, and I'll try to link the interviews, the specific interviews, if I can find them in the description below. It's very odd the links that you can put together, or that they put together for you, actually.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, man.
Yeah, and Manson was telling him, like, Tex and all those people, to make it look witchy, to make it look like it was a witch type ceremony. And that wasn't for the public's benefit. That was for the people who actually set it up, because it was supposed to look like, you know, mad black nationalists in the 1960s who did this, which I don't think anybody in the world believed that at the time or now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Sharon Tate murders, I think, as grisly as the Black Dahlia stuff was, man, that was sad, because the woman was with child and everything.
Oh yeah, there's so many cases that once you start getting into it, starts connecting, and a lot of these unsolved disappearances and cold cases are more likely than not a lot of time part of like these crazy serial killing sprees that are part of cults, or just insanely intelligent freaking psychopaths, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, did you have you heard about, like, they're still finding Richard Ramirez killings to this day?
Yes. Yeah. Which
Like,
is,
it's mind blowing. They're still like finding connections. They're like, "Whoa, this guy killed this guy." It's like,
and Ramirez just
wow.
kind of put it out there. You know what I mean? Like, he was straight up a very vocal Satanist. The old Berkowitz and Charles Manson, you know, they wrote him off as just being a nutter. But like you said, man, there's some sort of a strange link between it all, which makes you wonder who's at the top. When they put it out there for public consumption, the news sources, it just looks like some madman, you know, went on a killing spree because he's a nutter. Which there are, I'm pretty sure, a lot out there that were. Like H.H. Holmes, at the end of the day, he was killing people so he could donate the body, or not donate, because he was getting paid handsomely, so he could sell the bodies to these universities, because that's how they actually, you know, put their doctors through university. They would dissect these bodies, and there was a shortage of fresh cadavers. So he set up, in theory, allegedly, this crazy hotel so he could get these bodies and sell them to these universities, and he was paid handsomely for it. But at the end of the day, you have to be completely bananas to make trapdoors in your hotel that lead straight to the furnace, or, you know, to a bed of nails and stuff like that. Yeah, Ramirez, Brown Dwarf said Ramirez had me scared as a kid. He was in my area. Ramirez is scary just to look at. Like, he's got those dead black doll eyes.
Oh yeah, I had to listen to like a lot of those like voicemails he left for a video, and that shit had like, I didn't have nightmares, but it
Yeah, it's definitely
in
unsettling.
town and stuff for a while, man. It's so weird. Like, I don't know. It's so sometimes it's so taxing to see how depraved, the evil in a sense people can get, like how primal it gets sometimes. Because I feel like, I don't know if it's evil or just primal at the end of the day, you know?
It's downright evil, dude. Like, think of primitive man. Primitive man wasn't like killing for pleasure. You know what I mean? Like, say one tribe want to take over another tribe, they go in, they massacre them. Even if they eat them, maybe that's a part of their cultural rituals or whatever. But I doubt there was very much pleasure taken in it. You know what I mean?
that.
So yeah, I think it's pure evil, especially with Ramirez, who's, you know, saying straight up that he pledges his allegiance to Satan himself.
Yeah. Fucking Ramirez is just one of those cases. Just like, how do people become this way? That's a big question, because like
Yeah, that is a
whether
big one.
I'm not like a big religious person myself, but like I don't have like I really wonder where people would develop these devout hatreds, or like these devout, it's like, I guess like it would be the same. I would have to ask the same for like, I guess you say Christians or Catholics, like where people get these crazy devout faiths. But to me, it just seems extra odd when it comes into the things, I guess, of the more macabre. But maybe that's just because it's more against the social norms.
Well, I mean, that goes into the whole religion and faith thing, because I'm not a religious person either. I'm a man of faith. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. Religion is man-made. Whenever man's hands in it, it's always going to be messed up. There's always going to be some sort of organized uh, downing of a section or a class of people. That's just what comes with it. And a lot of people say Christians started the holy wars and all that. That wasn't Christians. Those was the Catholic Church. That's why, like I said, I'm not a religious person whatsoever. The Bible says religion is to our Father in heaven as dung. In other words, religion's a bunch of shit to God. He doesn't care about our man-made institutions. He cares about our faith in Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's why I'm not a religious person whatsoever. That being said, there is, and, you know, I talked to my daughter about this recently, because I'm only 34 years old. The world's nothing like it was when I was 12, and she's 12 right now. And kind of talking about things that she sees in the news and whatnot. And she has a very smart girl. She has a very, very decisive mind when it comes to good versus bad, you know, and she understands, like, say the Ramirez thing happened in her time. She could look at that and not try to quantify it and analyze it as some sort of a psychologist. She can say that man is pure evil and be comfortable with that. Like you said, where does that seed get planted in someone? There's a lot of people who came from disparaged homes and all that, and they grow up and they help people. You know what I mean? They become true contributors to the world in a positive way. But then you take somebody like Ramirez, who had that same type of upbringing, the same type of social shackles, and there's probably things that happened to him that are deplorable, but he took that and completely went the exact same way as the people that caused that in him, and flourished in evil and evil deeds. So that's one thing in psychology that has always been interesting to me. Where does the mind go when it's subjected to such madness? You know, because I find it hard to believe that somebody from a well-adjusted home can grow up to be Jack the Ripper. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure it's happening now, but I find that very, very hard to believe. There has to be some seed planted somewhere.
Well, for the Jack the Ripper thing, I think that was more of multiple people, but
You think so?
it makes more sense that way. I mean, in reality too, like it just makes sense that way. Like, unless there is a phantom killer, sure, but like the way that it was set up, it almost seems that there would have to be multiple people. I don't know. Just seems like the timeline. How could somebody kill people sometimes so quickly? Sometimes, because like there's still that debate where there's so many killings that people are attributing to Jack the Ripper that might not even be Jack the Ripper killings, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like sometimes some of these killings occurred at the same time. So how is he killing two people in two different areas at once, you know? So like I feel like it's like this case is so old and so really cluttered. Like how are you really gonna find
Well,
a
it's
straight
supposedly
timeline?
been solved here lately. There was one or two similar murders that happened in America, and they found out it was some merchant marine or something like that. Supposedly, I
Yeah,
don't
I've
see
seen a
how
ton
they
of
could.
theories.
Yeah, but I really
They even
believe the
have
from hell thing. Honestly, you know what I mean? Like, maybe just because it's romanticized or whatever, but when it comes to that kind of weird killing, the ritual stuff, I could see the royal family's hand in it.
Yeah, exactly. There's I don't know. I think there's so many people that study it. They call them there's like a whole study called like was it like what Ripperology? Is that what they
Yeah,
call
something
it?
like that. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And detectives who've gone through school to be detectives and investigators and inspectors who dedicate their time solely to those cases, which is kind of disparaging because, how the hell have they not solved it yet? It's what, over 100 years old? Yeah, I mean, that would be discouraging. Pay all that money for your education. You can't solve a crime over 100-something years old.
There was a case, I can't remember exactly what it was about, but a bunch of people argue about it on Facebook as usual. And basically they were arguing that it was like, oh, there's no way that it's real, blah blah. But I was like, basically it was just a case that it's an open thing.
Real.
Well, basically there's 7 billion people on Earth, right? So everybody's like, well, if there's 7 billion people and none of us can figure out this puzzle, quote unquote, because basically it's a puzzle that will show, I guess, some treasure that some guy hid. And so far, 7 billion people haven't been able to figure it out, whatever. And it was like, I don't necessarily think that it's 7 billion people haven't been able to figure it out. It's just 7 billion people don't care enough to figure it out.
Right.
And do you think is that fair?
That's fair. I mean, actually, that's perfect for the Jack the Ripper thing. But again, could you imagine being one of these investigators over there in jolly old England? You know what I mean? You grow up wanting to be a detective or an inspector. You go to school for 7 years. You graduate on the top of your class. You're like, I'm going to be the one that solves this bloody case. And 17, 18 years later, you're still pouring over 100-year-old files, scratching your head. Like, when's the point where you jump out of a window or go start selling ice cream?
Right. I don't know. Honestly, I feel kind of like some weird type of way. I'm like, well, why are we wasting, to me, it feels like almost like a waste of time sometimes. Like, we're still looking at Jack the Ripper when there's so many cases like that have happened recently that are cold, like that we could actually solve. And like, it'll actually matter when it's solved.
That happened in modern times. Now that we have DNA and all that good stuff to help us out, not just, I don't even think they were dusting for fingerprints back then when that took place.
Like in like the greater scheme of things, like what good or greater outcome comes from us solving Jack the Ripper?
Well, that's where that narcissism and pride thing comes in. It would help the person who does it.
I just I don't know.
Maybe just imagine being that guy. Imagine being that guy who has the aha moment. You know what I'm saying? You'd feel like $1 million.
Figured it out, you dumbasses. It took all these years.
It was the butler.
It was the butler. See.
They talk like 1920s gangsters in late 1800s London. That's who we needed on the case. If we had who was the guy who solved who put Al Capone in jail? Not Wyatt Earp. What am I saying?
Wyatt Earp. Well, Wyatt Earp would have got shit figured out.
Yeah, exactly. With that peacemaker,
he would have rode on in town with his gang and he'll figure that shit out.
Yeah, with his murdering dentist friend Doc Holliday and his brothers, who were probably pimps, honestly. But yeah, they would have came in kicking people in the mouths and.
I gotta see him. He'll walk in. He'll kick in the door. It's like, all right, we ain't leaving until one of you sons of bitches tells me where this Bigfoot is.
Oh yeah, somebody asked, "Is Bigfoot evil?" in the chat earlier. What do you think to that question? I know the answer, but I'm just, for the sake of the audience.
Bigfoot is evil because Bigfoot hides from humans, and he doesn't want us to learn. So Bigfoot is bad.
And everything that we don't understand or that doesn't want anything to do with us is automatically evil. No, personally, I don't think Bigfoot's evil whatsoever. I think it's the exact opposite. I think that they help people. There's a lot of these missing 411 cases that may actually be attributed correctly, where the victim, which are usually children, say that the big monkey kept me warm, or that case was this little girl said the big dog kept me warm. And, these monkeys, taking people or children to rivers, they die of exposure because these creatures have primitive minds. They weren't hurt or molested in any way. They were just taken where there's human traffic scene. So personally, I don't believe that the Bigfoot is a malicious or evil creature whatsoever. But we always fear what we don't understand, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. What's up, Sinister Dark Soul? Sporks are dangerous weapons that can be used not only to survive any situation in nature, but you can also break out of any prison. It's proven by MacGyver.
Nah, it's not proven by anybody.
No,
Anyways,
MacGyver is totally fact.
it's fact based, probably.
Just like Miami Vice, only fact.
Yeah, based on true stories, right?
Yeah, dude, only fact. It's not no, dude.
Not even
Dude,
based
it
on
says
true
true,
stories.
dude.
It's the straight transition
It's
from truth
the only
to.
word the only word we're focusing on, D, is the word true here.
Yeah, so yeah, all those missing 411 theories are true.
No,
Anyways,
those
Mr.
are
Swamp.
the worst. Man.
Yeah, those are the worst, and that's what we kind of want to give you a little public service announcement about. Mr. Swamp Dweller, thank you very much for joining me on this short show. As always, it's been a blast. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us in chat. I don't know what I have coming up next, but I've been working on a lot, just not finishing it in a timely fashion. So keep your eyes open because it's going to be fun, whatever it is. Love you guys. For Mr. Swamp Dweller, I'm DDoS. This is the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project. Thank you for joining us for this live show. Y'all have a great night.
Bigfoot did 9/11.